February 19, 1945. The black volcanic sands of Iwo Jima shimmered under the Pacific sun. The morning calm shattered as the first wave of U.S. Marines surged toward the beach. From the cliffs above, Japanese defenders peered through firing slits, waiting. The air thickened with cordite and sulfur. A storm was coming. For days, U.S. Navy battleships had pounded the island. More than 22,000 shells hurled into the rock. U.S. Navy log, Feb 1945. Yet when the Marines hit the shore, the silence that greeted them was chilling. Beneath the island's crust, Lieutenant General Tadamichi Kuribayashi's men, 21,000 strong, sat in a labyrinth of tunnels. Bunkers and caves undamaged and waiting, machine gun fire erupted. Mortar rounds screamed from unseen mouths in the hills. Within minutes, the black sand became a graveyard of steel and flesh. The Marines clawed forward, dragging flamethrowers, demolition packs, and rifles through ash so soft it swallowed their boots. Radio operators screamed for support through static. The enemy was invisible until the earth itself began to burn. Private First Class Harold Keller of the 28th Marines recalled the moment the tunnels came alive. You couldn't tell where the shots came from. You'd hit the deck and the bullets still found you. Marine Oral History, 1946. The Japanese bunkers, carved into solid rock, were impervious to artillery. Each hidden nest had interlocking fields of fire, reinforced by steel doors and sandbagged loopholes. Every inch of the island was pre-sighted. For the first 48 hours, progress was measured in feet, not yards. Marine engineers blew charges against cave mouths, only to see defenders reappear from another exit. The men called them ghosts in the mountain. The Marines soon realized conventional weapons, rifles, grenades, to even artillery, couldn't root out soldiers hidden deep underground. That's when a terrifying new weapon began to whisper through the ranks: the flamethrower. The M22 portable unit, developed by engineers at the Chemical Warfare Service and refined by the Bureau of Ordnance, could project burning fuel over 70 yards. Technical Manual TM 3376, 1944. It was cumbersome, dangerous, and unspeakably effective. But before its full wrath would be unleashed, Iwo Jima would become one of the bloodiest killing grounds of the Pacific War. The Marines faced an enemy unlike any before, men who refused to surrender, men who had prepared for death. Inside the tunnels, Japanese soldiers recited poems to their ancestors, sharpening bayonets and checking grenades, waiting for the tunnels to fill with screams and smoke. Day 3. Mount Suribachi loomed above like a black volcano of death. The mountain's lower slopes hid a network of pillboxes, so well camouflaged they seemed part of the rock. Machine gun fire laced the beaches, cutting down men as they unloaded supplies. Medical corpsmen crawled through the sand, dragging the wounded back to cover, sometimes only a few feet from where they'd fallen. At night, the mountain glowed red from tracer rounds and flares. The Marines fought in whispers, afraid to draw fire. The smell of fuel and charred metal clung to everything. Flamethrower teams moved like ghosts among them, 2 men to a unit, one carrying the tanks, the other providing cover. The weapon hissed, roared, and turned air into fire. Corporal James Red Atkins, who carried an M2 unit, later said, "It wasn't a weapon. It was a nightmare strapped to your back." Marine Personal Diary, March 1945. The Japanese called it the Fire Dragon. Many believed it was a weapon of dishonor, one that left no soul to bury. Kuribayashi's strategy was not to stop the Americans on the beaches, but to bleed them dry inland. His network stretched over 11 miles of tunnels, some descending 75 feet underground. Imperial Japanese Army Engineering Notes, 1945. Ventilation shafts doubled as sniper holes. Mortar crews fired and vanished. The Marines fought an enemy they couldn't see, until the roar of a flamethrower lit up the dark. By February 23rd, the Marines had reached the base of Mount Suribachi. The battle for the mountain was brutal, close, and personal. Each bunker had to be cleared by hand, grenades, satchel charges, and finally fire. The heat warped the volcanic rock, and the stench of burning oil filled the air. It was here, in this hellscape of smoke and sulfur, that the Marines first realized the psychological power of their new weapon. Flame turned fear into silence. When a jet of fire poured into a tunnel, the screams echoed like thunder underground. The defenders trained to die for the Emperor hesitated. For the first time, their courage faltered. The human instinct to flee fire was stronger than the code of Bushido. Marines reported hearing desperate shouts inside the tunnels before sudden quiet. U.S. Marine Combat Report, Feb 1945. That night, as the Japanese regrouped deep within Suribachi, an eerie calm descended. In the flicker of burning fuel, the Marines raised the stars and stripes atop the mountain, a symbol captured in an immortal photograph. But the war on Iwo Jima was far from over. The mountain was just one corner of the battlefield. The island still crawled with thousands of entrenched defenders, determined to fight to the last man. By the first week of March, Marine divisions advanced northward through the Motoyama airfields. Each airstrip was lined with pillboxes and caves that had to be cleared one by one. Flamethrowers became indispensable. Every squad wanted one. Every Japanese soldier feared it. The horror of the weapon was matched only by the courage of the men who carried it. The tanks held gasoline and compressed nitrogen. One stray bullet could turn the operator into a living torch. Yet they went forward again and again, crawling under fire to burn out nests that no grenade could reach. As one Marine sergeant noted, "You never forget the sound, the whoosh, then the roar, then silence." After action interview, April 1945. The weapon not only destroyed bunkers, it destroyed morale. Even soldiers hidden deep underground could feel the heat radiating through stone walls. By mid-March, the battle had consumed nearly 30,000 lives. The Japanese fought to the end. Kuribayashi himself refused evacuation and died in combat. Japanese command log, March 1945. But the terror of the flamethrower lingered in the minds of survivors. Many post-war Japanese accounts described it as the weapon that turned bravery into despair. As smoke rose over the island, the U.S. Marines had learned something chilling. Technology alone did not win battles. It was the will to wield it, the readiness to descend into darkness with fire on your back. But what the Japanese defenders didn't know, what they couldn't yet comprehend, was that the M22 was just the beginning. Behind it stood an entire network of American engineering, industry, and innovation, pushing the limits of human endurance. And the next evolution of that firepower would burn brighter and farther than anyone imagined. The Japanese soldiers trapped in the tunnels beneath Iwo Jima could hear it before they saw it. The hiss of igniting fuel, the roar of liquid fire cascading down blackened walls. The M22 flamethrower had become the Marines' answer to the impossible fortress. To understand how this weapon of terror came to dominate one of the most fortified islands on Earth, one must look not to the battlefield, but to the engineers, chemists, and mechanics who made it possible. The M22 was not born on Iwo Jima. It was the result of years of brutal lessons learned in the jungles of the Pacific. Earlier models like the M1 and M1A1 had proven unreliable, too heavy, too fragile, and prone to leaking. Chemical Warfare Service Development Report, 1943. The engineers at the Chemical Warfare Arsenal in Edgewood, Maryland, working with General Electric and carrier technicians, redesigned everything. They replaced brittle copper lines with steel. They refined the fuel mixture into a deadly cocktail of gasoline and thickened napalm. The result was a weapon that could project a stream of burning death over 70 yards, lasting up to 8 seconds per burst. Technical Manual TM-3376. 1944. Each M22 consisted of 3 tanks, 2 for fuel and 1 for compressed nitrogen, mounted on a frame that weighed nearly 70 pounds when filled. Operators trained endlessly to control the weapon's balance, as even a stumble could prove fatal. It was not just a weapon, it was a test of courage. In combat, the flamethrower man was both executioner and target. The moment the fuel ignited, every sniper on the battlefield fixed on him. And yet, despite the danger, the flamethrower became indispensable. The Marines nicknamed them Flame Angels for their ability to clear bunkers no other weapon could touch. In the dense fortifications of Iwo Jima, it was the only way to root out an enemy who would rather die than surrender. As the 4th and 5th Marine Divisions advanced north, flamethrower teams operated almost continuously. The weapon's effect went beyond destruction. It attacked morale. In captured diaries, Japanese soldiers described their terror. The fire comes into the hole. It eats the air. There is nowhere to run. Dramatized composite can captured diary fragment 1945. Even the most disciplined defenders panicked when faced with a weapon that could reach through walls and melt steel. On February 24, 1945, during the assault on Suribachi's northern slopes, the Marines brought in the first of the M4 Sherman Zippo tanks, an armored flamethrower variant equipped with a range of over 150 yards, Bureau of Ordnance Field Report, 1945. Designed by engineers at the CB depots in Hawaii, these tanks turned the tide. Where the handheld M22 could burn out a single bunker, the Zippo could sweep an entire ridgeline. The Japanese defenders were stunned. Their 7.7mm machine guns and 47mm anti-tank guns barely scratched the Sherman's frontal armor. The flamethrower tanks advanced methodically, their nozzles rotating like metal serpents, spraying fire into cave mouths and pillboxes. The fuel hit walls, splattered and rolled inward, sucking oxygen from the tunnels. Marines advancing behind them described the sound as 1,000 torches screaming. U.S. Marine Division report, March 1945. For Kuribayashi's men, the flamethrowers represented something more than physical destruction. They symbolized futility. The Japanese had built Iwo Jima's defenses to withstand any bombardment. Their bunkers were reinforced with concrete and volcanic ash. Their soldiers were equipped with gas masks, rifles, and grenades. But nothing could prepare them for fire that crawled along the ground, seeking every crevice, every breath of air. By the first week of March, the 3rd Marine Division launched a coordinated assault across the Motoyama Plateau. The 21st Regiment encountered an interlocking network of caves near Hill 362C, a position so heavily fortified that naval guns had failed to penetrate it after 3 days of shelling. U.S. Navy Fire Control Log, Ma 1945. The order came, send in the flamers. Corporal William Wren led one of those teams. Carrying the M22, he crawled forward under machine gun fire, his assistant feeding ammunition and fuel. A single burst of the flamethrower turned a dark opening into a roaring inferno. The pressure wave forced flames 30 feet back into the tunnel. Inside, trapped soldiers screamed before the air imploded. Wren's team cleared 7 caves in one afternoon. For this, he received the Silver Star. Marine Corps Awards Archive, 1946. Each flame burst consumed up to half a gallon of fuel. Resupply was a constant battle. Navy Seabees modified landing craft to deliver extra tanks, hoses, and pumps directly to the beaches. U.S. Navy Logistics Log, Feb. 1945. Behind every Marine with a flamethrower stood an army of engineers, machinists, and fuel handlers. The battle for Iwo Jima wasn't just fought with courage, it was sustained by industry. Yet the Japanese adapted. Some dug false tunnels to lure flamethrower teams. Others installed water tanks and airtight bulkheads to resist fire. One captured officer's map revealed networks with secondary escape shafts leading hundreds of meters away. Captured intelligence report, March 1945. Still, for every adaptation, the Marines found a countermeasure. In early March, the assault on the northern plateau intensified. The Japanese 145th Regiment, reduced to fragments, held their final strongholds near Kitano Point. The Marines advanced through terrain littered with wreckage, charred helmets, melted rifles, shattered bunkers. The flamethrower teams led every push. The smell of burning oil and flesh haunted the air. By March 16th, Iwo Jima was declared secure. Of the original 21,000 defenders, fewer than 300 were taken alive. U.S. Pacific Command Summary, 1945. Most died underground, entombed in the tunnels they had built. For the survivors, the fear of the fire dragon burned deeper than any wound, but victory had a cost. Over 6,800 Americans died, and more than 19,000 were wounded. Many flamethrower operators suffered burns from their own weapons. The tanks could rupture under gunfire or ignite if hit. The bravery required to carry one bordered on madness. Still, their impact was undeniable. The flamethrower transformed a stalemate into a series of tactical breakthroughs. It made the impossible island fall. As one Marine historian wrote, without the flamethrower, Iwo Jima might still belong to the dead. U.S. Marine Historical Division, 1947. What the Japanese never fully understood was that this was more than a weapon. It was part of a broader doctrine of innovation. Behind every burst of flame was the mind of an engineer, the hands of a factory worker, and the logistics of an empire that could mass-produce fear. In the months that followed, U.S. tacticians studied every engagement, calculating the efficiency of fire over steel. They found that a single flamethrower team could neutralize positions that would otherwise require dozens of men and hundreds of rounds of ammunition. Fire, they concluded, was not just destruction, it was precision psychology. U.S. Strategic Analysis Memo, 1946. And so, as the smoke settled over Iwo Jima, the American military began to look beyond this volcanic rock, to Okinawa, to the mainland of Japan, and to the future of warfare itself. The lessons of Iwo Jima would shape how fire, fear, and technology intertwined. Because on that small island, amid the ashes of Suribachi, the Marines had uncovered something far more powerful than a weapon. They had discovered a new form of dominance, the control of the enemy's mind through pure terror. The next stage of war would not just be about who could fire farther or faster, but who could wield fear itself as a weapon. The smoke had barely cleared over Iwo Jima when the lessons of fire began to echo across the Pacific. For the United States Marine Corps, the battle was more than a victory. It was a revelation of psychological warfare. Fire had proven not only to destroy fortifications, but to shatter the will of men. As reports filtered back to Washington and Honolulu, military analysts, engineers, and psychologists began to dissect what had unfolded on that small, black island of volcanic ash. U.S. Strategic Bombing Survey, 1946, described the weapon's impact as both physical and moral. The Japanese garrison, famed for its discipline, had been broken not by artillery or naval bombardment, but by a weapon that reduced courage to instinct. One captured Japanese soldier confessed that his comrades feared burning more than death in dramatized composite. The flames took away the dignity of dying for the emperor. It was a death without honor, without remains, without a story to tell. Kuribayashi's tunnel system had been a masterpiece of engineering, ventilated, reinforced, and designed to withstand the strongest shells. But the Americans had weaponized nature itself. Fire devoured air, turned stone into glass, and silenced even the most fanatical defenders. It was, as one U.S. analyst later wrote, an assault not on flesh, but on oxygen. U.S. Chemical Warfare Division Analysis, 1945. Yet for the Marines who wielded the flamethrower, victory came with scars no metal could hide. They had carried hell on their backs. When they pulled the trigger, they saw shadows writhing in orange light, heard the screams echoing inside sealed tunnels. Many would later describe nightmares of faces melting in the glow of napalm. Private journals, censored at the time, told of guilt that burned long after the war ended. Marine Psychological Evaluation, 1947. Still in war, morality often bows to necessity. The flamethrower had saved thousands of American lives by ending battles faster. Engineers refined the design for the Okinawa campaign. Lighter tanks, longer hoses, safer valves. Technical Improvement Report, April 1945. Portable models were paired with amphibious flamethrower tanks, like the LVT-A4, capable of clearing beachheads before infantry even landed. Okinawa would test these new doctrines. On April 1, 1945, U.S. forces landed on what would become the bloodiest battle of the Pacific. Once again, Japanese defenders fought from caves and bunkers, but now the Americans were ready. Flamethrowers and demolition teams led every assault, burning through fortifications faster than artillery could target them. Japanese field notes recovered later revealed growing despair. "We fear the fire more than the bullets. It leaves no body to honor." Captured Japanese operations log, May 1945. Behind the battlefield, the production lines roared. At the Detroit Arsenal, technicians welded new frames for flamethrower tanks. In small Midwestern factories, machinists tested valves and regulators. Women working night shifts mixed napalm in sealed vats, never knowing exactly what their labor would create. This was industrial warfare at its most human and its most inhuman, the fusion of engineering brilliance and elemental horror. By the war's end, the flamethrower had become a symbol of American industrial might. More than 30,000 portable units had been produced, along with hundreds of mechanized variants. U.S. Ordnance Summary, 1946. Yet even as victory neared, doubts grew within the ranks. Officers questioned whether such weapons would have a place in the moral landscape of post-war civilization. Could a tool designed to burn men alive coexist with the conscience of a nation? When Japan surrendered in August 1945, The flamethrowers were silent, their tanks stacked in warehouses. But their legacy did not fade. US psychological warfare experts concluded that the anticipation of fire had been more decisive than the weapon itself. Entire defensive units had abandoned positions rather than face the flame. War Department Psychological Warfare Report 1946. The lesson was clear. Terror could be engineered as efficiently as steel. In the Cold War years that followed, this idea evolved. The US military began to explore weapons that attacked not just the body, but the mind. Napalm, phosphorus, and later, precision-guided munitions. The logic was born on Iwo Jima. Dominate through fear, break the enemy before they fight. Department of Defense Tactical Evolution Memo, 1952. But within the Marine Corps, the flamethrower became a paradox, both a badge of courage and a burden of memory. Veterans' reunions in the 1950s often fell silent when the topic arose. Some operators refused to speak of their missions at all. One veteran interviewed in 1962 said only, "You could never forget the smell. It wasn't fuel. It was finality." Dramatized composite. The engineers, too, carried their own weight. Many who had helped perfect the M2 and M4 series later worked on peacetime technologies. Jet fuel systems, chemical extinguishers, even welding equipment. The irony wasn't lost on them. The same science that created infernos in caves now prevented fires in factories. In 1978, the United States officially retired flamethrowers from active service. Public sentiment had shifted. Television footage from Vietnam had seared the image of fire into the world's conscience. No longer a symbol of victory, the weapon became an emblem of excess, a reminder that some tools of war burn too brightly to be controlled. Department of Defense Decommissioning Notice 1978. And yet, historians argue that the psychological principle behind it, the exploitation of fear, never disappeared. From electronic warfare to cyber operations, from drones to propaganda, the essence of control remains the same, to make the enemy feel helpless before the fight even begins. Iwo Jima stands today as sacred ground. Tourists walk its beaches, unaware that beneath their feet lie the tunnels where men fought and burned in silence. The sulfur still seeps from the soil. The Japanese memorials honor courage. The American monuments commemorate sacrifice. Both sides remember the fire. The legacy of the flamethrower is not simply one of destruction. It is a mirror reflecting humanity's extremes. It shows how far men will go to survive, and how easily innovation can slip into terror. Engineers built it to save lives by ending battles quickly. Soldiers carried it to protect their brothers in arms. Yet in doing so, they unleashed a force that haunted even victory. A post-war Marine general once remarked, "The flamethrower ended more fights than it started." U.S. Marine Historical Symposium, 1958. It was both savior and monster, a paradox forged in steel and fire. Today, historians studying Iwo Jima see the flamethrower not just as a weapon, but as a turning point in human warfare. It marked the moment when technology crossed a threshold, where fear itself became a strategic resource. The island's tunnels still whisper that truth, that war is not only about who can kill, but who can terrify. From the volcanic slopes of Suribachi to the laboratories of Edgewood, from the sweat-soaked tanks of Marines to the silent calculations of engineers, the story of Iwo Jima's firepower endures as a lesson written in ash, because in the end, fire is not a weapon, it is a warning that once mankind learns to master fear itself, no fortress, no code, and no courage can truly stand against it.